Dive into the world of entrepreneurship with our guest, Bridger Pennington. Join us as he shares his journey to success, unraveling the lessons learned from both the wins and the challenges that have led him to who he is today and who he hopes to become tomorrow. Learn how embracing the hardest moments in your life can lead you to the most rewarding discoveries.
Welcome to The Dents in My Armor, a podcast of becoming for LDS women.
Hello, I'm Lee. She's Jenny. We're here with a special guest today, Bridger Pennington, and I just want to read a quick bio about Bridger so you know a little bit about who he is. Bridger Pennington currently runs 2 investment funds, the Ugly Unicorn, approximately 25 million blockchain and crypto investment fund, and Fund Launch Partners, approximately 30 million in GP stakes fund. He started helping others, and this is a really cool thing about Bridger. He has started helping others launch funds through a business that he co-founded called Fund Launch. It is an online incubator with over 100,000 students designed to help them start investment funds themselves without working on Wall Street or having a financial degree. In the last 3 years, his company has helped people launch over 300 funds. 12 of them have gone over 100 million in value, with 4.7 billion of reported client AUM. I hope that you're staggered by those numbers like we are. The way I met Bridger and why we asked him to be on our podcast today is, yes, because of how amazing he is in his professional life, but also because of how generous and amazing he is in his personal life. I met Bridger almost 2 years ago. We were asked to co-facilitate a self-reliance course for the church. I was immediately impressed by someone who could come in and really take over and really regale us with all of his experience and his knowledge. And he did quite the opposite. He humbly and quietly led a group of people who were in an entrepreneurial class toward starting businesses of their own. And I was just so impressed by not only how he carries himself, but his depth of knowledge, that I guess you can tell I'm a fan. Another thing I love about Bridger, before I turn it over and give you our first question, is that if you follow him on socials, and at the end we'll give you a chance, we'll have him tell you how to find and follow him. He talks a lot about his business, obviously, and he's really great at that. But Bridger never shies away from bearing testimony. And I have followed him on social media, watched his reels, watched his stories, and I love how he valiantly and without apology shares his take and his testimony on the gospel of Jesus Christ. So we hope that you're going to feel a little bit about that today. And Bridger, what would you add to your bio?
That's great. No, that's more than a good enough bio. Lee, is fun doing that class. Me and Lee were the instructors, which was fun. We had a good group of ladies that we were helping. Anyways, it was fun. And I'm married. I have 2 kids. Me and my wife grew up on the same street together. Grew up in Sandy, Utah. That's a fun story. So anyways, I'm happy to be on. Let's do this. Let's get into it.
We'd like to talk about how you got into the business that you got into and how you really launched yourself into this financial area. So what did your early days of business look like? Which I know a couple of your stories and they're amazing, but what led you into this path?
Yeah, I'll give the 2.5 minute version, then you can click on whatever you want. How about that? Because I could talk here for an hour, but that's not why we're here. So I grew up in Utah, went high school, and then went on a 2-year church mission to Taiwan, spoke Mandarin, which was awesome. Came home from my mission. I was super ambitious. I started 6 businesses my first 2 years of college at BYU. So I started a Chinese tutoring business. I built websites for people. We wholesaled 2 houses. I was doing anything to make money possible. Finally, my dad kind of grabs me. He's like, you're kind of like a chicken with your head cut off. Go meet with one of my business partners. This guy could really help you out. So I set up this appointment. And by the way, I lived in a normal house. Nothing bad, nothing great either. I just lived in a normal household. My dad drove a car with a dent in the door. Just nothing bad, but nothing good either. I drive to his business partner's house. His business partner lives in this huge mansion, like gorgeous, pool in the backyard, basketball court in the basement, and really nice cars, like very successful. And long story short, I get in this guy's house. We sit down on his little couch, and I ask him, like, how did you do to all of this? And he goes, I, run and we co-founded some investment funds. At the time, they were managing about $8.5 billion of real estate, which is massive, a huge amount of real estate. And he said, yeah, and I said, hey, can you mentor me? Can you teach me through this? And he said, Bridger, go talk to your dad. Your dad knows way more about this than I do. I said, no, my dad's kind of broke. We live in a small house. You live in the big house. Can I learn from you? And he said, Bridger, sorry to break it to you, but me and your dad make about the same amount of money. I was like, huh? He's like, yeah, me and your dad are pretty much equal business partners. I left the dude's house. I drove straight to my dad's house. I was like, Dad, what the heck? Like, why haven't, I've been able to order a soda at Chipotle for the past 10 years because it's too expensive, because we're saving money. Like, we don't go on vacations as a fam. Like, what are we, like, why? Like, what is going on? What's the disconnect here? And yet you're managing billions of dollars in, these funds. Long story short, my dad said, yeah, I'm more conservative. I like to save and invest my money. My partner likes to spend his money, but yeah, this is what we do. So my dad started to teach me about investment funds. Like anything in life, once you start to learn about a certain thing, you start to recognize that thing in your life. So I started to learn about investment funds. This is private equity, hedge funds, venture capital, real estate funds, how they're built, how they're put together. This is how the Forbes 100 list, the number one category of billionaires is fund management. This is one of the best business vehicles on earth. I was in college working an internship. At the job I was at, I saw an opportunity where we could launch a fund internally and finance the clients that were coming through this business. I thought it was a cool idea. I took it to my dad. My dad thought it was a cool idea. We started to build out this fund. I was 22 years old at the time. And we put together this fund offering, and I went and opened my fund. And the one thing about funds, though, is you need to raise money. Like, you need money. That's like, what is a fund? A fund, you just pool money together and you're making investments. And so I'm like, crap, who am I going to raise money from? And I thought, well, my dad, I'll just go talk to my dad, right? Like, duh. He's got tons of money. He doesn't spend it on us kids. He'll love to invest in my fund. So I went and pitched my dad for money. My dad lovingly says no. He says, Bridger, if I invest in your fund, it would ruin the experience of you raising money on your own. This would be a crutch that you'll never be able to recover from. So he says no, kicks me out. I go out, I raise a whopping $49,500 from about 7 investors, which is teeny. I don't know if that sounds big or small, but in the fund world, that's about as small as you could possibly be. About 50 grand we raised, but it was enough to get started. We launched this first little micro fund. Our first group of investors got a 64% return on their money. So small amount of money, but good return. We then closed that fund. We launched our second fund. I ran that fund for about 3.5 years while in college. Our cash on cash returns were phenomenal. I think they were 62, 47, and 36% cash on cash returns to our investors. Did really, really well. During that time period, people started to ask me, my dad, my brother. I didn't mention my brother's an investment funds attorney. He was at the largest law firm in the world for funds that does fund management. And we're all in Utah, for crying out loud. We didn't go to Ivy League schools. We didn't go to like Wall Street. We're in Utah, which I know we're all in Utah here, but people make fun of Utah. Like in the financial world, like I was at the Greenwich Economic Forum a few weeks. They're like, why do you live in Utah? Like what? And I'm like, I'm from there. Like, oh, like I've been skiing there, but like why? Like they thought they were really interested. Like why? Why do you live there? It was like I like it. It's a good spot. Anyways, I digress. But anyways, so people started asking us how to do funds. So we built this small little podcast and YouTube channel. It then grew into a small course and then a bigger course. And now, like you mentioned earlier, we've had over 100,000 people take one of our courses online around funds. We've thrown big multi-thousand person events. We have a huge incubator. It's about 70 people in this company. We've grown this. We ended up, me and my co-founder out of college, we run this still today. Anyways, a phenomenal business that we've scaled. That's really cool. And then during that time period, I launched 2 more funds like you just talked about. We managed about 50 million total between those 2 funds. One's in crypto and blockchain, one's in GP stakes. And we're in the game right now. I'm an active business owner, operator. I have about 70 employees, and it is a grind. It's a every day there's a new thing, and I'm still in the game is what I'm trying to say. I'm not like retired, like sitting on my couch. Like I am in the game every single day doing like moving, shaking, doing cool stuff. So anyways, I'll pause there. That's a little bit of my journey and story. Yeah.
I thank you for sharing all of that. I love everything that you were talking about and saying. And there's a couple of things. So this is going to be like a 3-headed question here. One of the things, and I want to probably circle back to this. I love your dad saying to you, if I helped, I would ruin the experience. And there's such wisdom in that. And there's parallels to our Heavenly Father in that as well, and how he talks to us as his kids. So put a pin in that one for a minute. But one of the things, and as I was learning about you and following you on Instagram and things, and you had recently talked about how work is so pivotal to that. You didn't want to retire. You're too young to retire. So the work aspect of what you were talking about online is that's part of the human nature of us. That, and obviously your dad instilled that in you because he wasn't willing to bail you out or rescue you from a learning experience. How have you parlayed like what you've learned from your father, what you're learning from a gospel sense, into this mindset of work and of doing the hard thing? Because I don't think that that's natural for a lot of us. A lot of us are looking for the easy button, and I'm not hearing that from you.
Yeah, for a long time, I think most people are this way. I was working for that, like then. I'll work now so that I can be retired, sit on a beach, and do whatever. And I think that's true for a lot of sense. Like at the beginning, like because I was like, I got to get out of poverty, not true poverty, but like I like am broke. I gotta like make money to survive. And then I made enough money to survive, and I was like, okay, I want to make enough money to thrive. You know, have like an excellent. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to try to make more money so I can. And now I've hit a point in my life where I've kind of done. I feel like I've done both of those. And it was so funny. I have a business partner, Dan Young, awesome guy. He mentioned he had a mentor that sold his company for like huge, like $100 million. And within 6 months, the guy was suicidal, ready to take his own life. This is back in the early 2000s. And he's like, and he went and talked to him, and he's like, and he had gained like 50 pounds. His whole life was in disarray. He had just sold his company for like $100 million, wants to take his life 7 months later. Like, why? And at a similar time period, I read a stat around lottery winners. So lottery winners, you've probably seen different stats like this, but these are large lottery winners that win over $10 million, which people would say that's the dream come true, is winning the lottery. That's what most people would respond with, right? Lottery winners were $10 million. If I remember correctly, 60% said within 5 years, they were bankrupt, they lost the money. What's interesting though is 70% said their life was worse off after they had the lottery. They would rather go back to their life before they had the lottery. 70%. And I thought about that a lot of, money is interesting then. And what does it mean to have that amount of money dumped on somebody? And furthermore, what does it mean for humans? And what's actually the purpose in life? And back to that first example, the guy that was suicidal, one of the reasons he was suicidal, he had so much purpose at work. He had something to do. He had something he was building, a passion he was going after. And now it was all gone. He'd gotten a paycheck, but there was nothing else to build. And so all this came together, and so I'm pulling up multiple points here. That's like similar time, I listened to a talk from Elder Bednar. And Elder Bednar's, I can't remember the name of the talk, but it was all about work. One of the first commandments God gives to Adam is to work. Go and till and work the ground. I believe the human condition, we are meant to work. It's what actually gives a lot of satisfaction in life. Now, let me define work. I believe, and I'll say this as well, the happiest days that I have is when I'm working the hardest. When your pillow hits, your head hits the pillow and you're like exhausted. Those are some of your when you look back, some of your favorite days of your life, when you're like, man, it was just crazy. We did Trek last year. Like your head hits the pillow, you're like, but it's such a fulfilling day. Back to Elder Bednar, he talked about like this human condition to work. Now, defining work. I define work as, it doesn't need to be just working for money. You can work on your charity. You can work on your kids. You can work on your body. You can work on your golf game. But it is work. And I believe with that broader definition of work, I'm going to work until the day I die. Now, I hope I don't work for money until the day I die. I want to work on other things, but the people I see that are happiest, the people that whenever I'm the happiest, when I'm striving and working for something that's growing and contributing to the world, right? Whether it's kids, myself, whatever it is. And so with that broad definition, I look back and Elder Bednar's talk was all around the satisfaction around work, and furthermore changing. And I had a full change of mindset of I'm not trying to avoid work. For myself for a long time, and I think most people included, try to avoid work. And they spend a lot of time working in their brain to avoid work. And instead of rewriting your brain to say, I'm actually going to lean into the work. I'm most happy when I'm working. And with a broad definition of working, actually, the joy of life comes from the work. We appreciate the things that we've worked the hardest on, right? And so I had to rewrite my brain definition of like, no, work is good. Last night, I was with my wife. We had a crazy day. I worked a 12-hour day yesterday, came home, and then it's 12 hours plus then kids and family. We just had all this stuff. And I was with my wife last night. I was like, honey, it's good to work. It's good to have some, it's better than the opposite of having nothing to do. And she was like, yeah, I totally agree. We're like, and you have to keep reminding yourself, like, work is good. Like it is good to have something to do. Now there's balance and what's that right word? Moderation in all things, but I'm going to work until the day I die, and I'm going to find joy in the work, and put me in a self-reliance class with Lee Burge, and we're going to work that thing to the bone, or put me on a ministering assignment, or put me in a calling, or put me on work for money. Like, work is satisfying. It's where the most joy of life comes.
So good. So good. So I'm going to ask you this question. People who are listening and maybe meeting you for the first time could be, not that anyone is, but could be sitting here thinking to themselves, well, he's had it easy. Yeah, I mean, he's a hard worker, but I mean, I bet nothing bad has ever happened. So, the name of our podcast being The Dents in My Armor, we sort of have this tagline that the dents that we sustain in our armor don't define us, but refine us and are evidence that we can survive our hardest days. So, Bridger, talk about a hard thing. Talk about a setback. Talk about a failure that perhaps, people listening here and just listening to the last 20 minutes, they wouldn't suspect that you've faced. What did you walk away from that hard thing knowing that you didn't know before?
No, I love the question. This is great. And I'll pin first of, my dad said no that first time and still said no and no and no and no. Never invested in a single fund I ever did until, get this, Lee, until like last month. He wrote his first check into our other fund, $250,000, which is like a teeny size for him. But it was his first check ever. It's like 9 years later, which is crazy. Back to hardship, though. I think we all have things, right? And I'll just talk about an experience, and we can talk about the experience later. When I was, 12 years old, my brother, I have two older brothers. My middle brother, he was student body president at Alta High School. So he was a sophomore class, junior class, student body president. And then went on, was a presidential ambassador at SUU. So was doing awesome, crushing it, planning to go on a mission. Calls us one night. He has a migraine headache, and he's had it for like 3 days. He's like, I don't know what to do. Like, he's crying on the floor. Like, what do I do? And my dad drives down. They take him to the hospital. And this headache, and we really don't know how it started, didn't go away. It got better, but it was stuck with him all day, every day, middle of the night, first thing in the morning. He had one constant headache for a year, and then 2 years, and then 3. We went to about 22 different doctors around the country. My parents flew him around. They did all sorts of stuff to try to figure this out. His friends went on missions. His friends came home from missions. Nothing. They could not find a single diagnosis. Nothing. We did Eastern medicine. We did foot zoning. We did blood work. We did kidney doctors. We did, the wonkiest doctors you've ever thought of. We've tried them all. At least at the time, we tried them, as many as we could find. Things helped him, but nothing really helped. He had one constant headache. It was so severe. It was interesting. He was on we'd always ask him on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at? Like a 2, a 1 or a 2, he could get up, go out, be normal. A 7, 6 or 7, he's on the ground crying, ice pack on his head, just like, bad. He would go from a 2, if he ate like a little candy bar, like a little Snickers or something, he would go from a 2 to a 7 in about 30 minutes. So his gut is very reactive so we did diets with him. We did cleanses. We were trying all sorts of stuff. Anyways, long story short, about 3 days before my 16th birthday, so 4 years in, he actually took his own life. And obviously devastating time. And I was with my friends on a trip. I get called, I drive home, everyone's flying in for the funeral. My birthday's the day before the funeral for my sweet 16 birthday. And we have this big funeral. And I remember, I'll just tell you the story. I'll just keep going. That let's see, that night, the night after, I remember kneeling down, and we kind of knew it was coming a little bit because he had talked to us about taking his own life. Like, it was so hard to see him suffer that much. And we're like, no, stay with us. But you know, it was 4 years is a very long time to be in that much pain. I remember that night I knelt down and prayed on my bed, and I asked God, is this all real? Meaning, is this whole families are forever thing real? Am I ever going to see my brother again? Oh, wow. I got like fireworks behind me. Is this whole thing real? And I remember kneeling down and asking God that simple question. And I remember feeling like the heavens opened up. And I feel like a white light of goodness just poured upon me. This feeling like this is all true. This is, you're going to see your brother again. It's going to be okay. And that experience carried me like crazy. We had the funeral, and then a couple weeks went by. About 3.5 weeks later, my parents tell me they're getting divorced. So within a month, my brother had just committed suicide. My parents tell me they're getting divorced. I'm going into high school. It's the summer going into high school. My older brother is married at law school in Arizona. So I'm pretty much the only one at home. I'm kind of like a single child. My parents are now split up. My mom's living in an apartment. They're split up. And, I remember sitting there thinking, well, a couple of things from there. Number one, of this could be the excuse that I use to derail my life, or it could be the story that I tell one day. I remember thinking that in the moment. And I remember telling myself, this is the story that I'm going to tell one day of how I overcame or how I conquered this really hard time in my life, right? And I decided to take that path instead of the other kind of more destructive path that some people take. That summer, I felt like I was carried by the Spirit. I remember having multiple spiritual experiences back to back to back. And I felt like I was like I was kind of by myself. Like I didn't like being home. I just spent most of my time out of the house. I had friends, and I just didn't want to be around my family because my family really had blown up in like 3 weeks. I then get into high school. I start my high school career, and I go to seminary. So I'm in a seminary class. And in seminary, I was in you could call it a pretty popular group of kids in the seminary class. We had, junior, senior, sophomores all in the same class, some very well-to-do kids. And the teacher gets up and says, hey, I want to do an exercise. Everyone write down your 2 biggest trials on a piece of paper. And we're going to anonymously put them into the front of the class. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to ace this test. I got 2 good ones. So I write down my brother just committed suicide and my parents just got divorced. And I put those in a piece of paper. I put them in the basket, and everyone else does the same thing. And the teacher then collects them all and starts to read them out. And this absolutely changed my life because my 2 problems, I couldn't do anything about, right? Like they were outside of my control. And it's like, I kept telling myself the quote at the time, like, only focus on what you can control. I remember telling myself that like hundreds of times. Only focus on what you can control. You can't control your parents' marriage. You can't control your brother. Like you can just control what you can control. And she starts to read these notes out. And it absolutely changed my entire high school experience. She would read them out. So she'd read like, I have really bad self-worth. My dad has cancer. She starts to read these things. The 2 most, by far, like 80% of people's 2 biggest trials, guess what they were? And by the way, I believe your biggest trials are your biggest trials. I keep getting stuff on my screen. I got balloons popping up. Your biggest trials, though, are your biggest trials, right? I had zits in middle school. That sucked. It doesn't sound as good as having your brother pass away on a sacrament talk, but having zits in middle school, sucked. It was just not, your biggest trial is your biggest trial. So the 2 biggest trials were, number 1, I don't have friends, or I don't like my friends, or Lee, you're making me tear up because I'm seeing you tear up. I don't have friends. Number 2 was I don't like myself, self-worth. I don't like who I am. I don't like the person that I see in the mirror. And she kept reading them out, and they kept going back to like self-worth and friends, self-worth, friends. She reads mine, and then self-worth, friends, goes back and forth. And I remember she ended the class. I got up, and I remember leaving that classroom and saying, I would do pretty much anything if someone could solve my two biggest problems in my life. And on the way back to school, if I meet somebody, make a friend with them, and make them feel good about themselves, I could effectively solve someone's two biggest problems like pretty quickly. Who am I not to go and do that? And I remember making it a mission of mine at school. Like, I am going to solve this for people. Like, I'm going to meet people and I'm going to make them feel good about themselves and talk them up and like really try to like engage. Cause a lot of kids don't like high school. And I'm like, I'm going to be the guy that's going to help them love high school and love being here. And it absolutely changed my entire high school experience. And I remember there was a great Mormon message years ago. They talked about the dichotomy of the soul. Generally speaking, when you focus on yourself, you don't get better. It's not like if you break your arm, you should go focus on your arm. It'll heal your arm. The dichotomy of the soul is the exact opposite. The more you focus on yourself, the worse it gets. The more you focus on others, it heals your own soul. It's a very interesting thing about the way we're built. And that next 6 months and throughout my whole high school, I tried to focus on others a ton. And I used my older brother was an amazing example. I remember he had a goal sheet. This is my brother who passed away. He had a goal sheet that he would meet 5 new people a day, and he would remember their names and say hi to them every time he saw them in the hallway. So when he'd walk down the hall, he'd be like, hey, what's going on? You know, what's up, Susan? What's up, Karen? Like, hey, Joe. Like he'd try to remember one cool thing about it. Oh, how's soccer? Like, hey, how's football going? How's band? Like, he did 5 people a day. He was the most popular kid I've ever met in my entire life. He knew we had, at the time, our high school had about 3,000 kids. He was student body president. I mean, he had like he was the most popular kid I've ever seen in my entire life. Like every weekend we had a new group of kids at our house, like a brand new group, hundreds of kids at our house, like every weekend. It was crazy. So I tried to employ that through high school, and I think I did it to a small degree. I was junior class president. I was student body president. I was captain of certain sports teams, but like I really tried to embody that and really make that something because of my brother. Now, to wrap that story up, my parents got back together about 6 months later. So they were separated, then got back together. I had a great high school experience. Like I didn't try to make that a negative thing, but that was you asked about a tough moment. That was a tough moment, right? That I look back on and something there. So I'll pause. I'll let you can double click on wherever we go over direction you want.
Thank you for sharing all of that, especially such personal experiences that you went through. And some of the things that stuck out to me, I love that you said it's either an excuse or a story. And what fascinates me the most is how young you were making that decision. And I know at 16, that was the oldest you had ever been at that point in your life. So it wasn't like you were old, you were young to yourself. But what was it? And also prior to that moment of it's either an excuse or a story, you said that you knelt beside your bed in your darkest moment, because I would imagine at that point when the loss of your brother had been the darkest moment of your life. What had you done prior to that moment that had prepared you and created a relationship with your Heavenly Father that you knew, hey, it's the darkest it's ever been. I'm going to turn to Him. What was it that you did that made you turn to Him instead of defy Him?
Yeah, on that question, to that point, I had a number of personal spiritual experiences, like quite a few. I'd experienced praying about the Book of Mormon, praying about Joseph Smith as a prophet, multiple spiritual experiences that I felt were truly spiritual experiences from God. So I had a decent testimony at that point. I'd received my patriarchal blessing, which like changed my life. So I had a number of very strong spiritual experiences that pulled me to God. And at that moment, that was the only option. Right. And I learned through, reading the scriptures, people that turn away from God generally come back and find Him later. So if you want to just shorten the loop, just do it now. You know what I mean? Like shorten the gap. Anyways, the first question you asked too was on the mental frame. I believe I heard this the first time from Sherry Dew. So shout out to Miss Sherry Dew. But it was on mental frames of how people choose to view themselves. People view themselves in typically 3 categories. Category number 1 is victim. You can hear them. You tell me your story. People will tell you a victim story. They don't know they're doing it, but they tell you, this happened to me. I was something that was acted upon, to use a scriptural term, like a victim, which we all know, we've heard of those stories before. The next story is the survivor story. you've heard people share this. I have people in my family that share this. You ask them, tell me about. You'd ask them at the same similar experience. Well, we survived through this thing. We're pressing on. We're working on it. We're surviving. That's essentially the story. And I believe people are the stories they tell themselves. You are the story you tell yourself. The final story is the hero. In a hero story, take like a movie, for example, it doesn't matter what happens to the hero. The most horrible things will happen to a hero. And guess what the hero does? They persevere, they conquer, they overcome. It doesn't affect the hero. And I'm a big believer in self-talk. I think the way you talk to yourself is one of the most crucial things that all of us do or don't do, like do to our benefit or to our detriment. And if you self-talk yourself as a victim, you'll probably be and act and respond like a victim. If you respond like a survivor, that's fine too. But I actively try to respond as the hero. This is to my benefit. This is going to be the story I one day tell. This will be those are strong mental frames of a hero complex. And so this is how I'm going to help other people in the future. This is, God, and we see this a lot in the church. This is a trial God's given me to help me be better. And it's hard to do that in the moment. And for whatever reason, I had within that month or two, I'd really decided to take the hero frame of this is a great story that I will one day tell. So I'm going to conquer, I'm going to persevere. I'm going to help other kids that are going through this. I'm going to be the one that conquers. I don't know why that came up or why that was, but looking back now, those three mindsets I think are crucial. And my wife knows this. Back to the self-talk though. I'm a big believer in self-talk. You do not talk negatively to yourself. I don't like my kids. Like we do not talk. And people will say, well, that's just what I'm like. I don't know what it is, but like, I'm a big believer in affirmations, and you tell yourself who you want to be and how you want to look and how you want to be. So I'll pause there, but that's the mental frames that I took at that stage.
No, that's so good. I mean, I think you have tons of science to back you up on that, right? The psychology of self. I mean, it's definitely proven that the words you tell yourself are who you become. So you actually circumvented one of my questions, which was going to be, give us some examples of some of the things you tell yourself, but you did that. Unless there's any more you want to throw in.
Didn't Elder Stevenson give a talk on about the girl that had the bunnies? And they had these two, they were trying to do trial studies with, do you guys remember this a few years ago in General Conference about the bunnies? So that they were trying to do all these tests, and one group of bunnies kept like outperforming all of them. And they found out it was one of the researchers every day would hold the bunnies and say nice things to them and stuff. And it drastically changed the outcome of these bunnies, the way she talked to them. Yeah. There's other studies. If you just look on YouTube, it sounds wonky, but you look up, if you looked up hate and love jars, there are hundreds, I'm not kidding, hundreds of videos. They take a jar of rice that says hate words on it and a jar of rice that says loving words on it, and they leave them for 2 months. And the hateful ones, literally it's written the word hate, or they say hateful things to it, is moldy, nasty, disgusting. The jar that says loving words is like still fine. And it's not like there's hundreds and hundreds of people, because everyone says that's got to be a lie. I'm going to do it myself. And then they go do it and like, oh crap, this actually works. So think about that in context of the way you talk to your kids, the way you talk to your spouse, the way you talk to yourself. There is, back to a ton of, I believe, science behind self-talk, the mental frame, the blueprint. You can use whatever word you want, but the way you view your life. I know some people that view their lives as a survivor or as a victim. Everything happened to them. It didn't happen for them, right? And I believe that life happens for you, not to you.
Yeah. Beautiful. And you know what's interesting about those studies is it feels really believable in those studies when it's a living thing, right? Bunnies, plants. But then you bring up this example of rice, or the other one that springs to my mind is water molecules. Like, there's just so much research about what we would consider inanimate things in our vocabulary that this also affects. It's so powerful. Okay, here's my question. You are a person that from the outside can do 30 hours, accomplish 28 to 30 hours of things in a 24-hour period. That's what it looks like from the outside, Bridger. It feels like you're effective, you're efficient, you're purposeful, you're focused, right? How do you do that? How do you balance family? Because I know you spend time with your family, and it's quality time, right? With your wife and your kids and your mom and your dad. You serve church and church callings, and you don't half do it. You do it all the way. And then you have this business, right? The successful business. So what's your secret? How do you balance all of these things and get everything done that a person from the outside looking in, sees you accomplishing?
Well, I don't know if I'm that great, but maybe I am. I actually made a podcast about this morning. So I'll share
Okay.
two things though. To answer that first question, to quote Elder Bednar, he says, balance is bogus. You heard him this quote before. Balance is bogus. You can only be in one place at one time doing one thing. So do it all out. I'm not perfect. I try to do that. That quote has stuck with me a long time. So when I get home, I have a little mental trigger. I put my fingers together. I take a big breath and I tell myself, back to self-talk, I need to be as funny, smart, sharp. I need to be the best dad in the world as I walk through those doors, and the best husband to my wife. I literally tell myself this as I pull in my car home, and I take a deep breath. I put my fingers together as a mental trigger, and I'm like, boom. And I start my second work day. Like, I walk through those doors and I'm like, hey, what's going on, kid? Like, let's go play. Let's go do it. And I've just come off a crazy day or whatever. Like, now I'm not perfect at it, but that's what I strive to do that. My wife might tell you differently, but I strive to do that. Same with church, same with whatever. I think you can, you set a mental block. Okay, I'm stepping into a new version of myself, and here we go. Right back to efficiency, though. It's funny. As I've gone through my business life, it's interesting. You don't notice how much you grow until maybe someone else recognizes, someone else sees. I had an assistant last year tell me that same thing. She's like, Bridger, I've worked for a lot of people before. You get done more in one day than most people get done in a week or 2 weeks or maybe in a month. And I was like, oh, that's nice of you. No, she's like, no, for real. Like, you get done more in one day than like most people do in a week. And we kind of talked about that for a little bit. And I think to make a science out of it a little bit, or to make it actually actionable, there are, in business terms at least, there's only 4 leverage things in business. There's 4 types of levers in business, meaning how do you leverage and do more than what you're currently doing? Because you only have so many hours a day. So there's 4 types of leverage in business, like an old business principle. Leverage number 1 is money. So money can buy you lots of leverage. You can buy hours. You can buy someone to cut your lawn. That saves you an hour. You can buy someone to do minimal tasks that aren't worth your hourly rate, right? So that gives you leverage. So finance, money is number 1. Or you can buy companies. You can move at a greater speed. Number 2, in no particular order here, by the way. Number 2 is technology. So code. So there's softwares, there's efficiencies through, it could be AI or chat that helps you do and accomplish more. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3 is labor. So I kind of mentioned on the number 1, but labor is where you actually have people, right? More people can obviously do more than one person. So hiring, and you can use money or code to get some of that labor. Number 4 is media. So media, it gives you leverage in business, is, doing a podcast, having thousands of people watch one thing of media gives you lots of leverage. The Kardashians, to give a crazy example, have lots of leverage on media. They make one Instagram post and makes millions of dollars. For someone like me, it takes me, I got to work 100 hours a year, or whatever, 100 hours a week to make $1 million. And they just do one Instagram post and make $1 million, right? A lot more leverage. So when I think about my time, how do I leverage time and get more out of what I'm putting in? I look at those 4. I try to do things in my business. I only focus on those 4 things. Anything outside of that, I'm going to probably say no to. My assistant as well, she was like, I'm so shocked at what you say yes and no to. And over time, there was an interesting quote from one of Elon Musk's ex-wives. She's like, you'd be surprised how many things Elon Musk says no to. Like, really cool, exciting, great things. He just blatantly was like, yeah, I'm not going. Like, it's not moving the needle. And so I've gotten better at saying yes and no to things. Like, me and my wife just got invited to go fly out to Monaco, be on a yacht for like 7 days, and like be in Monaco in July. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have time for we're good. We passed. We said no. That's like a dream come true trip. We just got invited on for free. They're going to bring us I don't know. We don't I got stuff to do. I got other stuff to focus on. I got to be maybe call me back in 2 years. We would love to go to Monaco. But right now we got stuff to do. I got kids to raise. I got callings. I got family. I got a business. I got stuff to do. So I don't know. I am not perfect at this. That's just where I'm at as of today. I bet if you ask me this question in 5 years, it'll be a very different answer. But at least the journey I've been on so far, the journey of entrepreneurship, I think is one of the best self-development courses on earth. Who you have to become to build a business like you guys, to build a podcast, to build a show is so interesting. You have to become something insane. And the biggest bottleneck on businesses is typically the person, is the head, is the leader. And so if your business isn't growing as fast as you want, it's probably your fault. And I'm telling that to myself. Like I all the time, I'm like, why do we suck? And it's like, it's because of me. I did not hire the right person. I didn't do the right, like, okay, and how can we do that better? Like, why did we give that wrong? We had an employee like do a bunch of crappy work, like, and just really set back our business like 6 months. And me and Mason sat down and we're like, okay, well, obviously this employee, and you could take the victim or survivor mentality. Well, that employee, but we took the other mentality of like, okay, well, why did we hire them? Why didn't we fire them sooner? This is our fault. I know they messed up, but like we shouldn't have even given them the chance to mess up. Like, why did we do that? And we had to debrief really, like, why did we hire this person? Why did we get, like, it's our fault. It is my fault. Extreme ownership, right? It is extreme ownership that everything in your life is your fault, for good or for bad. And so anyways, I'm going on way too many tangents here. I'm going to pause. Okay, we're just going to pause and we can just move it somewhere else. But you guys take the mic back.
I have loved everything that you've talked about. And I really am hoping that our listeners, one of the things, and Lee knows this about me, is I always have my pen right next to me and I'm writing notes as you speak, because there's so much knowledge that you are sharing with us. And I appreciate all of that. But being mindful of time, I am aware that we're getting close to wrapping this up. If there was one guiding quote or guiding spiritual scripture that you, like, it's your touchstone, what would it be and why, as we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'll talk about the definition of success, at least in this life. I thought about this a lot because I'm in the business world. I'm in the financial world. I'm in the money world, right? What is success? I've been around a number of family offices that have hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. It's very interesting to see their kids and their grandkids. Some of them are great. Some of them are horrible. It's very interesting. Number one on that, I think money just exposes who you are. It makes really great people really great, and it makes really horrible people really horrible. But back to the definition of success, I think the greatest success in this life that we can achieve is having a spouse that you love, that you're married to, that are building an amazing family that's compounded through generations. Now, this is the ideal. This does not work for everybody, but I'm talking about the ideal, the ultimate success here. So don't take this negatively if this is not you. But if the people that I look up to the most, my wife's grandparents are this way. They've been married for 50 years. Their kids are phenomenal humans. Their grandkids are absolutely phenomenal humans. Like, they're doing excellent things. They're running businesses. Now they have great grandkids that are also amazing. Like, of the whole group, there's like 70 of them. I think there's been 1 or 2 divorces of all 70 people. Like, you go to the family vacation, like I don't know, 80% of the men have like 6 packs. Like, they're ripped. These are like superhuman people, like in every category of their life. And I look back and I go, wow, that's like the ultimate flex, the ultimate success in this life. Meaning, because you can't buy that. Okay, you can't buy it. You can't even build it by yourself. You have to do it with somebody else. And furthermore, you can't even build it in 5 years or 7 years or 10 years. It takes like 30, 40, 50 years to build that with someone else that's committed with you. And me and my wife talk about that, and we're like, how cool is that? And they're very spiritual. Like, they're so cool. If you guys know, you guys follow like True Millennials. Do you guys know that? That's my brother-in-law. So he's in that family. My other brother-in-law just got home from working with Elder Kieran. He did a 14-day mission trip in the Philippines, filming all of his stuff. Like, that's just 2 examples of people in this family tree of, like, they are serving in their church. They're growing. They're like, it's compounded through this amazing family. Fruit. Where is your fruit, right? What is the fruit of your life? And I think money's fun. I think there's a lot of things to do in a business, and it's self-development, and you can do a lot of fruit there. There's fruits in all aspects of life. But when I go back to, like, what are we ultimately striving for, at least in this life? Something close to that or near that or that, I think is, man, like that's the ultimate success. Can you do that? And what a cool thing. And when I see, and I've only met a few people in life that actually truly have that. Most people don't. But man, what a cool ideal to strive for and to go after. And we have great people like you guys putting out great content and more. I don't know. We're preparing the world for the second coming right now of Jesus Christ. And we've got a lot of work to do here. And I think, one more note on this. I think this work though I think you can do it in every aspect of life. I think what I do at business, I think it's like, not always, but I try to make it the Lord's work. Who you hire, who you fire, what you do, like there's ripple effects in business. Obviously with your family and your kids and church stuff, but like we had this conversation on Sunday at church. Someone was talking about how much time we give to the Lord. And we're talking about like tithing, and someone brought up like, well, like, it's funny, like when you go on a mission, like 2 years is like 1/10 of your time. You're kind of like giving up. And so he's like, by the time I'm 60, I need to give up like 12 years of my life. And he was kind of doing the math like that. And I raised my hand. I said, well, that's one way to do it. But like the way I think about it, I just think everything's the Lord's work. Haven't we consecrated to give everything, our time, talent, and energy? Like, haven't we said we're going to do all that? Like everything, not just for the couple hours a day you read your scriptures, like how you interact with the lady at the grocery store is doing the Lord's work. How you work with your employees or team members at work or whatever, like that's doing the Lord's work. How you interact with your kids or your, like everything, how you interact with yourself and who you're developing yourself into is the Lord's work. And I'm like, I don't know. I think everyone in this room is given, 80, 90, 100%. Like we're going at it. And then he was like, oh, I've never thought about it that way. And I just thought, we're in it right now. We're all in. And be all in. And back to the Elder Bednar quote, you can only be one place at one time doing one thing. And so be all in, be at it. So with that, there's my ending remarks. As I said before, I'm kind of long-winded. You guys should have cut me off way more on this podcast. But anyways, you let me talk. So thank you very much for having me on. That was a great time being on.
Oh, you're welcome. And there's been a lot of wisdom that you have shared. And I am just truly grateful that you've been vulnerable, that you've been authentic, and you've been willing to share with us. And I respect that our listeners are like, man, we need more of Bridger. So where do they go to find you, Bridger?
Yeah, so I'm on pretty much most social medias under Bridger_Pennington. So Bridger Pennington, make sure it's the verified account. There's some like fake accounts out there. So find Bridger Pennington verified. If someone wants to learn about investment funds, I don't know if your listeners want to do that, but we have tons of free content on investment funds. So I have a free course. If it's at fundlaunch.com or bridgerpennington.com, both those work. You can get a full free course, like 20 plus videos on investment funds, how they're built, how they're put together. We try to just help as many people as possible for free if we can. On our content. And then I like to, like you said, sprinkle in church content and other stuff in my stuff as well. So Bridger Pennington, that was a great place to find me.
And thank you so much.
We will put all of Bridger's handles and also the links that he just talked about in our episode description so that you'll be able to easily find it, our listeners. And just one thought, Bridger, I just want to say thank you. As you were talking about the things that you say yes to and the things that you say no to, that you say no to a lot of things. It just took me back to by the way, listeners, Bridger and I talked about him coming on our podcast a week ago and he immediately said yes. And that tells you everything you need to know about Bridger and what he says yes to. If it's building the kingdom of God, he's saying yes. So thank you.
And anything for Lee Burge. Come on. Anything for Lee,
That's how I feel too. So yes. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Bridger. Until next time, she's Lee and I'm Jenny. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the Dents in My Armor podcast. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast and join the conversation as you comment and share with your family and friends.